All right, guys. Thanks for joining the Elation podcast today. We are with T. Ray, the violinist. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good. Appreciate you having me today.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
Yeah.
I know you've been a violinist for a long time. You've been in music for a long time. But let's get back on the origin story. Where did it all start? You're from Baton Rouge, correct?
Yeah. So I'm originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I've been a New Orleanian since 2006. So I moved here right after Katrina to go to the University of New Orleans, and so that's when I got started in planting my seeds here in New Orleans. But yeah, everything started in Baton Rouge for me.
I got you.
Yeah.
Where did music start for you? Where'd you get the bug?
Yeah, so the first time, I played violin twice. So the first time there was this program in my elementary school called the Pull-Out Program. So it's arts enrichment where they have music instruments, but then also they have arts and craft, visual arts, and they had a teacher who came to the school 3 times a week. The first time they came, they were doing this presentation hey, if you sign up for this class, you'll come to the auditorium 3 times a week to learn how to play the violin. Mm-hmm. And so the particular class that they came to present this in, I was actually in math class, and I disliked math class. I was not very fond of the teacher. Not many people were.
Right.
So I was like, so I could sign up for this and it'll get me out of class 3 times a week. I was like, sign me up.
Sign me up.
So
right.
that was the initial thing. It wasn't that I had an interest in playing the violin. It was just a scapegoat.
It was just a scapegoat. Well, the funny thing is music is a lot of math. So it's kind of funny how that rotated in.
Yeah.
And shout out to good teachers too, because good teachers can change lives.
Definitely.
There's definitely ones that you remember and you don't remember,
Right. That's true.
But did you play anything else growing up?
No. Or? So I played violin fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. Then I decided to quit because the new teacher I had in middle school was not be able to connect the dots. She wasn't someone who saw us as, it was always like a teacher peer type thing. I'm the teacher, you have to do what I say, as opposed to connecting with us as humans. So that really drove me away. But then also the bigger part of it was, people are growing up and we're being influenced by others. So I started getting picked on for playing the violin, being just a young black male, at the time, this is, we're talking about the mid 90s, this, it wasn't cool. It doesn't have the flair that it has now.
Right. 100%.
In society. So that really drove me away from it. And then I started to concentrate on sports. I played trumpet for a couple years and then inevitably came back to it in high school. And that's when I feel like my journey really began. So,
yeah. Did you play in a school band or in high school?
Yeah. So I played in the high school orchestra. So I literally had to learn how to read music all over again. So trumpet was 7th and 8th grade. 9th grade, I said, all right, I'm going all in on sports. Started playing football. And then 10th grade, that's when I started back playing the violin. So
yeah, it makes sense. I quit playing guitar because I wanted to play football too. I couldn't do both. It was just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So.
But the crazy thing is, at the time, I was still able to do both. But upon going, getting into my senior year and about to graduate, you have to start really thinking realistically about what you're going to commit to. So so I did leave sports behind senior year, but I was able to juggle both of them throughout.
Well, that's hard to do, man, because once you get the applause for the sports thing, man, and you're in the room by yourself trying to learn a guitar, right. I'm just gonna go play sports.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. So what type of music did you pick up that you like to play? Because I know you like to play jazz. Was that the first kind of genre that you stepped into?
Yeah, so when I started playing again, I was doing the typical orchestra thing. I was learning all of these different orchestral pieces, and we were doing the high school competitions and things like that. But my high school orchestra director, he's a jazz bassist by trade. So Mr. Christopher Frazier, shout out to Mr. Frazier. He studied with Mr. Alvin Baptiste at Southern University.
Gotcha.
So he started to introduce me to the jazz idiom, and that was my first, real introduction to jazz as a genre, but then also in the context of trying to figure out how it would sound with the violin. Upright bass, it's known, it's established,
right.
But then the violin is like, okay,
it's like not quite jazz, right? Yeah,
yeah.
But,
so trying to figure that out.
But that's why I love jazz though, because it's so open. I mean, there's no boundaries in it. I feel like you know
definitely.
whether the tempo changes or the key changes or the just the rhythm changes itself. I mean, I feel like you can do anything with jazz.
Right, and the interesting thing is, man, like I had a much easier time embracing and learning jazz and how to improv than I did learning how to read music. So my improv and ear has always been way stronger than my reading skills.
Right.
And it just kind of was a natural progression. It wasn't like I was trying to go against the grain of what classical music is or being in an orchestra.
Well, it's hard. You're doing two things at once. You're reading and you're playing, and somehow you got to play before you read.
Right.
So it's all about muscle memory, I think, at some points. Over and over and over again.
Definitely.
But what are some of your favorite jazz musicians?
You can't. That's like asking somebody what their favorite food is.
I mean, and everybody comes up with almost the same answers. But I feel like jazz. I feel like you could dive in. I mean, I'll be honest. Like, I don't know if I could pick out jazz musicians myself, but like blues, I would be like Fats Domino and like B.B. King, but jazz. I don't know. I don't know if I could pick one.
I think so I have I'll break it into two. So, early influences, Wayne Shorter, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, like a lot of the people who are really pioneers of the idiom, the genre. But what really made me embrace being able to improv and play jazz and other genres on my instrument were people that I felt were a little bit closer and contemporary. So the Christian Scott, so our Chief Ajwa, as he goes by now, Robert Glaspers, people like that who had the, I guess you could say, the traditional upbringing within the jazz idiom or just improv, but then they took it to make it their own. Christian Scott, Chief Ajwa, created stretch music out of jazz, and Nicholas Payton has called it Black American music. So so just being people who have taken the ideal of it and made it their own thing are people who have really inspired me. Their music is great, their music is inspiring, but the way and the purpose and how they've done it is what really has brought me closer to them being some of my favorite musicians, if you will.
Well, is that something you've taught your students? Because I know you're a teacher as well, right?
Yeah, so I used to be a full-time teacher. Ironically, I make 10 years on May 24th.
Congratulations.
Leaving the classroom.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's crazy. It's like that 10 years went by in a blink of an eye. But yeah, that's something that I talk to students about when I was in the classroom full time. But then also when I do workshops and just go to perform for students, I tell them, like, look, it doesn't matter what instruments you play. You could play the clarinet, and you could want to do rock music. I've never heard that done personally, but that doesn't mean it's not possible for that to be done. So I always advocate for students and just people in general to be able to go forth and chart your own path. Don't
think
feel
outside
like
the box.
Right. Just because you play the violin doesn't mean, and there's nothing against doing this, doesn't mean you have to sit in the orchestra. It doesn't mean you have to play a certain genre of music, country music, whatever it might be. You can play whatever you want to. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's when I combine music and math, I think, there are multiple ways to get to the same answer in math.
Exactly.
Exactly. And it's kind of the same in music. There's definitely multiple ways. I mean, look at Beyonce, coming out country, even though I don't really say it's country. I mean, you listen to the rest of that album, it's a Beyonce album.
Yeah.
But, there's some country references.
For sure.
But that was a crazy collab. How do you feel about that? Because I know a lot of people were kind of iffy on her cross genre-ing. Is that what we call it?
So I will say I think that doing that was definitely left field. You know? But I think that it just goes to show, I think some of the, how can you say, some of the backlash on it, kind of showed that a lot of the ideology and the acceptance of, people of color, one, and then people who don't typically do that type of genre of music stepping into it it's, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, well, but I feel like there's more black country singers now than there ever has been. But I feel like when they're really country singers. Like they're really coming. They're wearing the cowboy hats. They're really that's where they grew up, and they got that accent and but what I loved about it was well, first of all, country has crossed over into pop. As it is, as a whole, as a genre. But what I loved about it was just like, when Linkin Park and Jay-Z combined. Like, that was not necessary. No one expected it. No one wanted it or asked for it. But it changed a lot of dynamics in between the cross genres,
Right.
So I feel like anything like that is good because it shouldn't break a barrier. It should break a barrier. That's what I'm saying. Like,
right.
Yeah. But tell me about eclectic fusion. Because you've created your own genre, right?
Yeah, so eclectic fusion is a term I came up with a few years ago. So when I was in college, I went by T-Ray, the hip-hop violinist, and it started to compartmentalize me into just hip-hop.
Right.
People are like, oh, you play hip-hop on the violin. And this is, we're talking about like right around that period of time after Miri Ben Ari had done the Apollo. For those of y'all listening and watching, she's the lady, the Israeli lady who is in Twister's video, Overnight Celebrity, and has worked with Jay-Z and, all these different people. So I was like, man, I don't think I'm a hip hop violinist because I still play jazz. I still play classical music. So I had to drop that. I just said T-Ray the violinist.
Right.
I wanted it to be a very general thing, even though my sound was specific to a certain, texture.
Right.
So I said, my genre, my influences are jazz, hip hop, R&B, house, pop music. Even some country maybe to an extent, So I wanted to make sure that what I labeled, for lack of a better term, what I labeled my sound as was something that would transcend all of those barriers.
Right.
Because when people, have me play for, have me play for concerts or festivals or private events, they know I'm going to bring a sound that is encapsulating all of these different influences.
Right.
So.
That's awesome. Well, if you were to pick a genre that's close to it, what would you say it sounds the most like? Your eclectic fusion.
I guess I would say jazz fusion.
Okay.
Because you have these different
elements
sounds and
everything in it.
Yeah.
So, and is that what your new project is? Considered eclectic fusion? Visionary, right? Is your new project coming out?
Yeah, so Visionary is the my EP that was released in 2021, and then I have a new project that I'm working on called Identity right now. So,
and they fit in that genre?
Yeah. So it has influences of these different elements. Some of them are more poetic pieces. Some of them are more, like we have a song that I worked on, and my drummer Bettis, shout out to Bettis, he put the bounce beat on it. So, and I told him, I was like, man, I want to do like a kind of a remix of it, and we did it at French Quarter Fest, and it went over really well. So, has a lot of different elements. So New Orleans and everything.
Awesome. And I know you've played on a lot of festival stages, talking about performing. How does it feel to have basically performed on every major festival in New Orleans? I mean,
pretty dope, man.
It's a lot of eyes.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me, man, has been, shifting the culture and the perception of what the violin can do, when it comes to playing in those spaces. Because a lot of times, I have conversations with people and they'll reference the violinist in, what's the group's name? It's escaping me now. Dave Matthews Band.
Oh, okay.
They'll reference that and it's like, okay, cool. That's cool because it's a part of an ensemble.
Right.
But how about the violin actually leading, and leading as the lyric vocal instrument with or without lyrics, and that's what I work to have people really understand at shows. It's like, yo, the violin can lead just like a trombone shorty or
just like a guitar.
Yeah.
It absolutely can. It's a mini guitar.
Right.
It's
less strings, no frets with the,
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, it definitely when you see people using violin, what do you call that?
The bow.
The bow.
Yeah.
That's right. They're using bows on guitars now.
Right. I've seen it.
forget what I saw recently. They were using something to on a bow on a violin, and it sounded weird. But they do all kinds of stuff, especially for like movies and stuff. They use violins for a lot of those weird and like eccentric sounds that you hear.
Yeah, I've seen. I saw this in Vancouver, British Columbia. This duo, it's a guy and a young lady, and she plays violin. She sings, but then also she had a saw with her. And I don't know if you've ever seen people like run a bow along the backside of a saw, and it makes this like kind of like screechy, scary movie sound. But it was super dope in the context.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and it's funny how you can use things different capacities. But no, I've always loved the violin. My grandfather played the trumpet, but when I decided to pick up guitar, I was back and forth between stand-up bass, violin, and guitar. I ended up picking guitar.
Nice.
But yeah, not nice because I didn't stick with it.
Yeah, you found your niche.
Sports got in the way. Yeah, 100%. But tell me about some of the people you've worked with over the years, because you've done some big collabs.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest was speaking of festivals. I performed with Big Frida for Voodoo Fest. This is probably we're in 2024. This might have been like 2015 maybe. So performing with Big Frida, I've opened for and performed with Tang and the Bangers. I recently worked with Tidra Moses on a new song that she's releasing this year. I got my start with DJ Rod Smooth and Dizzy. So they were really the people who like took me in and brought me into the fold as far as the music community. And
shout out Smooth.
Yeah. Shout out to my big brother Raj. So I work with quite a few different people, and just take something from those experiences and realize like, this is the path I'm supposed to be on. I think we all kind of deal with those moments where it's like a stamp in time where it's like, all right, this is confirmation that I'm on the right path,
right?
And you just keep building on it. Like I did a tour called the Brick by Brick tour last year, and it's like that's literally what we're doing. We're all building brick by brick,
right?
No matter what we're doing in this life. So,
well, tell us about that moment. There's a lot of independent artists that don't get, or musicians that don't get that moment to be on stage with like a Big Frida or somebody that's major. Did you take in that moment as you were walking out to play, or after you finished? Or during the show, I guess you can, because there's that moment that you were just talking about where you're like, man, this is where I need to be in life. Does that happen before, after, or during, I guess is my question.
I think early on for me, it kind of was a series of all three. You know, like when you get the call or the text and it's like, oh, this about to happen. And then you focus on the moment, for the show, and then you reflect after.
Right.
So I think there's three phases of that whole thing. But now, I just think of it as, one, I don't take any opportunity for granted, no matter how big or small. But I think of it as, okay, this is another opportunity to learn, expand, connect, build relationships, and look at it like that.
Right.
So I don't get, some people get starstruck. Like I don't get starstruck. Like I'm like, we both people who work in the same space and field, but we just happen to be at different levels over there.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about your EP. I guess both EPs. Visionary was what was the process of making that, and I guess what was your big song off of that project?
Yeah, for sure. So Visionary came out of the idea that I felt like I was stuck in this particular space, only doing certain types of performances. And I had a phone conversation with my big brother, Lou Hill, who's the band leader and MD for Waterseed.
Okay.
I had a conversation with him, and I was like, hey, Lou, what is it that I'm not doing or need to do? He was like, T, you need to record your own music. You need to release your own music. Like, the covers are great. You're seen as a performing artist.
Right.
You're performing, but you're not recording and releasing music.
Right.
And when he said that, I was like, oh, you know what? He's right. Like I had done a few things here and there, recorded my music. And unfortunately, like a lot of artists, we let things sit on our laptop or hard drive, collecting dust instead of just putting it out. So when he said that, it shifted something in my brain. I was like, okay, I need to at least put together a 5-song project that's all original production. I had a couple features. Alfred Banks was one of them. Shout out to my brother Alfred. Sybil Chanel, who's a part of my band now. She's a vocalist. So it was really a 2.5, 3-year process. It would have been out before COVID, but COVID happened. And
COVID screwed everything up.
Because we still needed to record the string quartet parts. So
Gotcha.
So I had a whole string quartet that played the parts that I arranged, and putting that out just was my statement to the world, like, hey, this is my sound.
Right.
This is the direction I'm going, and I called it visionary because I feel like I'm a visionary. I feel like we're all visionaries in our own right.
Right.
So I wanted to convey that message.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
And then what about your new project you said you're working on?
Yeah. So Identity is a compilation of tracks from over the last 4 years. I have some features that are going to be on those as well. And this one is going to be a little bit different. It's going to have some highs, some lows, some interlude type pieces as well. I'm doing some vocal work. I'm going to have some more features on there. So it's going to be a much more well-rounded project, if you will.
The interludes are so important. People don't understand how intros and interludes just make things connect more. There's more glue. There's more character to it. It's more individuality.
Yeah, and we're living in a single world,
right.
like a single market. But I think there's still a certain magic when you can like really put a project together. Because I hear some interludes on like a Spotify playlist or DSP playlist, and I'm like, yo, that's a vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like in this mix of like other artists, and I'm like, why is this not longer?
Right.
But it's that sweet, like,
well, that's what
50
makes you
seconds or so.
Turn it back on or listen to something else in that same vibe, because it's not that long. It's funny. It's tough to pick that timing, because you've always wanted to go longer.
Right.
But I feel like there's the right moment to end it, and that makes you turn it back on.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's awesome, man. Well, putting out your own music and being your own individual artist, I feel like definitely pushes you further in your own musicianship, because you're not, when you've been playing covers, whatever, you're thinking different on your side because you don't want to play those same notes, those same chords.
Yeah.
So I feel like it always pushes you to be a better artist. What about writing camps? What I know we did a couple here at Elation.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about writing camps here in New Orleans? Do you think they're a good thing?
Yeah, I think something like that is necessary. I think outside of performing, I think that we have to, definitely embrace the music business side of things, but then also, writing camps, production, just building those incubator type environments.
Cultivating, local writers to work with bigger producers that they wouldn't normally get to work with. That was kind of the goal of the Elation, writing camps, was just to bring in people from outside of New Orleans to work with local guys and people and girls and give them a lift that they need, and you don't have to look at leaving the city to work. Right. I feel like it's one of the big things down here is there's no real union. There's nobody cultivating us.
Yeah. Everybody of course has their own vision and doing their own thing, but I think there's a special magic, and that's why I'm very intentional about collaborating with other artists on projects too, because it breaks up the monotony of it just being instrumental, but then also, we're able to kind of go back and forth about what's going to work best for the song. Like the first writing camp I ever went to was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, crazy enough, right? And it was Rico Love's music conference, and he brought out Brian Michael Cox and man, who else was there? It was a bunch of different people, like over this 3-day span. But that was the first time I was able to like kind of sit in a space and just listen to how people approach writing songs from a different perspective. Right. Because we think about the beat, we think about the lyrics, but the overarching goal is that we want people to be able to connect with the whole thing. Right. So, yeah, I think those are important.
Well, and you also learn I feel like in those moments you also learn how to narrow your scope on what you're writing too, because I think it's under 40 words is what they're saying is a hit.
Yeah.
Right. So to think about that and learn how people use that algorithm or that thought process, I feel like that was eye opening to me.
Yeah.
You know, because you just think it's creative. You just go in there and say something that feels good, and that's not the way it is.
Right. So I know you're interviewing me, but I have a question. So how do you feel about what you just said about under 40 words, and then like the commercialism? Because I think that's an interesting paradigm that, you know, we can see a simple melody or a simple hook as it being commercial, but then it also like in the context of
beautiful. It's perfect. Like it's an answer and response type of thing. You know, like everything has an answer and response. Even the way you talk there's a flow to it. So I feel like when the melody is correct, you don't even have to say a word. You know, that's why there's a lot of songs that we mumble what we think they're saying, but we have no clue what they're saying. But we love the melody, you know?
Right.
So I feel like those moments, like if you can't whistle it, it's not rememberable. That's what they say in that top 40 range, you know? And I just think there's something to it because it happens over and over and over and over and over again. So that algorithm, you know, it's real, you know?
Right.
So people are either take that in easier because there's not too many words, or people are simple. I don't know. I don't really know how to explain it, but it just seems to work, you know? But I definitely don't like the commercialism of like being put in a box. If we're going back to what we were talking about earlier, like that timing of 3:30 was killing me forever when I was making beats. I'm like, really? I got to end here? Really? You know, like, well, there's no reason to keep going, you know?
Right. It's weird, man, because not weird, but I kind of use that same structure when I produce my songs. Like I'll, you know, whether it's all instrumental or a feature, like I'll have an intro, verse, chorus. I might have a bridge or a solo section and then chorus out.
Right, and you gotta get out, right. You know?
And it's like, you know, it's like 354 and some change, you know, at most. So
yeah, no, and it's definitely a theory that works. Well, let's talk a little bit about what brings elation to you in your life.
Okay.
What would you say you nail it? So elation is peak happiness, is how, you know, we like to define it around here. So what would that be for you?
When I'm able to connect with people on and off stage in life, and they see the light in themselves to go forth and chart their own path, whether they're on that path already or they've hit a roadblock and they, you know, need some type of inspiration to keep going, you know.
Spoken like a true educator.
I've been out the classroom a long time.
Oh, man, no, it's the ultimate give back, man. That's the ultimate give back.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's a great answer. And that's music's going to give you that opportunity a lot. So that's awesome. Tell us a little bit about your socials and where people can find you and find your projects. Yeah,
so you can find me online at traytheviolinist.com. My Instagram is T_RayTheViolinist. It's RayTheViolinist. And then I'm also on YouTube and other social media outlets as well. So awesome. Instagram and YouTube are pretty much